Hey, everybody. David Costello here, founder and host of Growing a Firm podcast and CEO of Jetpack Workflow. Today's guest is Anjali Jaiwala. She is the founder of Fit Advisors, a financial planning firm serving physicians and business owners virtually across the U.S. And when we were talking pre-interview, the thing that really struck me about her story and what we're about to talk about is both how she transitioned into running the current firm that she's running, but also how intentional she was about the design and who she served. She was saying that people call her like the super niche or the micro niche person in the industry, right? So we've talked a lot about, defining your specialization or your niche, but now we might even go more micro, and really excited to have you on today's show. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So for folks not familiar with Fit Advisors, quickly walk us through who do you serve and what are the services you provide for them?
Sure. So, Fit Advisors is actually going to turn 6 years old in May. And so we serve physicians who have complex tax needs, your kind of practice owners, your 1099s. And then we also serve small business owners. And by small, it's usually businesses that have anywhere from like 1 million to 12 million of revenue. So they're kind of past that startup stage, and they're really trying to transition from kind of that startup to a full-fledged business and kind of need help with that transition and also bridging the gap between their personal and their business finances.
Awesome. Well, you had mentioned early on that almost from day one, you were very intentional. So walk us through that transition. How were you thinking about your firm? What was, fair game? What was out of bounds? How are you thinking about the audience you serve? Just kind of walk us through that initial design and why you're able to start from that place when so many firm owners, I think, were just trying to get dollars in the door, trying to pay off their mortgage or their rent. So walk us through that transition and some of the intentional design you had early on.
Yeah, I think some of the reason why I decided to kind of niche and specialize is because, as a financial advisor, we're generalists, right? And being a generalist is something that's very uncomfortable for me personally. I started my career at PwC. I was super specialized in what I did. I got really, really good at a really small thing. So transitioning to planning, financial planning was, it was like a 180 from what I was doing. So I'm used to trying to get really good at one specific thing because that was my whole prior career. So when I transitioned to financial planning and I launched my firm, I was like, how can I bring that specialization into my practice, right? So I did kind of a lot of things that business owners probably make the mistake on, right? I in the beginning was like, I'll just take anyone who comes in because you do want dollars in, but what I started doing was I was reassessing my fees and my value proposition every 3 months. I still do it now every 6 months. And the reason why is because I, at the end of the day, like when I was designing my firm, I had a goal as to this is how much revenue I need to make in this amount of time. Otherwise, I need to find something else to do, right? Because I gave up, when I look at it, I gave up a lucrative career to transition to this. And this is still a business. It's a business I love. I love what I do, but it still has to provide for my household, right? So I live in Southern California. It's very expensive here. So this wasn't just going to be a hobby. This was something that needed to provide for me. So if I knew I wanted to build this and I wanted to build it with a small firm, so I have me and one other person right now, and I had a cap, like I could only serve this many clients, but I needed to make this much, like you can I kind of backed into like, here's the average I need to charge. So how do I charge that average is let me see if I can become really specialized and serve a very, very specific group of people where they can take advantage of kind of all the value that I could provide for that small group.
Yeah, and to as much as you can disclose, um, what was the initial price of your services? I don't know if it was hourly, if it was fixed fee, or something else. Kind of where did you start from day one, and how has that evolved to today? Because you said every three, now 6 months, you're looking at the fee structure.
Yeah. So when I started, I was doing $200 a month for a single person, $300 a month for a couple. Plus, I was charging like a small asset under management fee. Then I transitioned to more of like a flat retainer. So then I was kind of doing like 5,000 for a single person, 7,500 for a couple. And then I realized that with my tax background, I was getting a lot of 1099 physicians. That's kind of like the first group that came in. And we were doing a lot of like, planning around that, tax planning, entity planning. So I was like, well, I'm doing all of this stuff that usually like a lot of advisors in the profession who are serving physicians don't have that knowledge to do. So I was like, okay, let me raise it to 10,000 minimum, right? So I just kind of slowly kept kind of raising the minimum until, and then, I got to a point where it was too much of an inflow coming through. So I was like, okay, now I have to take a step back and really think about it. Because with pricing, when you're doing flat fee, the issue that I was running into is that um, two people can come through the door and have a prospect call, and they may surface level seem exactly the same, but then when I dive deeper, I'm spending significantly more time on this couple than I am on this couple, and it's because this couple also wants to do XYZ. They have a life transition. So I went from just doing like pure flat fee to more of a complexity model. So I have a complicated spreadsheet I put together where I essentially outlined, this is everything I do. Here's my base planning fee, which now starts at 15,000 a year. And then if you have other factors that add to the complexity, which adds to the time that we'll spend, then the fee will go up from there. So that model I've actually had for about a year now, and that's the one that I'll probably continue to stick through. I'm always tweaking the spreadsheet and the model as like I'm like learning as to like what my clients need and what I'm helping with. But that's kind of how my pricing has evolved over the past 5.5 years.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you hear so many stories about, you know, small business owners. You hear a little bit less about a specific individual or a couple, like the physician, but it shows you that for the right segment and the right value, you can have clients paying you 10 to 15 a year. And what encompasses that from a service package perspective?
Yeah, so the 15,000 a year is really like the base planning, which essentially is, having your dashboard, all of your information is organized, ongoing planning, access to me at any time that you need, all your insurance reviews, kind of helping you work through estate planning, home affordability if you're purchasing a home. So any of those life changes, right? Planning for a child, new home purchase, career change, reviewing contracts, helping you negotiate job offers. That's kind of the base planning fee. And then the complexity fee is if you're 1099 and we're doing work around that, then that might be more. If you also are a small business owner, and there's another added complexity fee. And usually my fee kind of starts out with 1 million under management. So if you have more than 1 million, then I'll tack on a fee for that. So, and the other piece of it is I also work with a lot of couples and individuals who are looking to build like real estate, passive income portfolios. So I've just because I've had clients, a lot of clients interested in that, I've developed the expertise in that as well. So if someone comes to me and they're like, we're interested in doing this, I know the time it takes, right? So I can add that complexity. And the reason I essentially went to this model is because I wanted to make sure that I'm charging appropriately for my time, right? That's what we should all be doing is we're charging appropriately. And we always undercharge when we're first starting because we're kind of getting a feel for things. But once we have clarity on what we're doing and the value we provide, and we know the time it takes, it's really easy then to really kind of slot in, okay, this is how much my time is worth. This is how much I really should be charging. And when I'm at a higher price point, so I'm not going to be able to get everyone to come in through the door, but I don't need everyone to come in through the door, right? I can be selective. I'm taking anywhere from 5 to 10 clients a year, and that's enough. So I don't need the volume, right? I just need the right people to come in where I can fully service them based on the fee that I charge and the value that I'll provide.
Got it. So when so essentially you're looking at growing again, there's a lot of complexity, there's a lot of variability, but call it minimum 150K in revenue per year, but you're maintaining that specific service package. Or a niche. What is the ultimate goal you have for the firm, right? Do you want to ever accelerate the growth to, 1 million a year, quadruple the team? Is it work-life balance? Like, how do you view the ultimate destination for Fit Advisors?
Yeah, that is probably what I spend the most time on right now, to be honest, is maneuvering and deciding on that. So I'm a mom, right? Fit Advisors will be 6 in May. My daughter will be 5 in May. So like I've either been pregnant or the mom of a small child. So when I designed Fit, I knew I designed it to be like I can only really serve maybe 50 clients with me and one other person. I'm at 45. So at the 50 mark, that's when I have to decide what to do next. And to be honest, I go back and forth. I don't know yet if I want to build a firm. I have interest in kind of financial literacy and providing education. So I would like to do some work on that. I'm writing a children's book, so I want to focus. I want to spend some time on that. So I'm at a point where I, like a lot of business owners usually will hit this point at 5 years in, where like they've grown the firm and the money is enough, right? So now you have the capacity and the time to really think about what more you'd like to do. And for some people it is growing a really large firm. For me, I don't know if that's what it is yet, right? I'm comfortable, but and I want to explore other things that I have interest in. So I'm doing a lot of work. I'm working with a business coach to really kind of figure out what like Fit Advisors looks like once I hit 50, and then what me as like the professional, what I'm going to do in terms of how I spend my time going forward.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those. Yeah, it's a good problem to have, right? It's still a problem.
Yeah.
You got to figure it out, but it's kind of a good problem to have. Okay. In the early days, how did you get the first handful of clients, and what kind of expectation did you set for yourself? Is it 6 months? Is it 1 year? I either need to hit this revenue or I'm done. And then, seemingly you hit it, or we wouldn't be talking. And so, how did you get those early clients?
Yeah, the first 10 clients are the hardest. That's what I'll say. I think any business owner can attest to that. And it was kind of random. I had my very first client, and they're still clients of mine now. They came through as a referral from another advisor. He's also a CPA with a background in tax, and he's like, they're not a fit for me, but can I send them to you? And I said, sure. Like I would take anyone at that point. That's when I started to also kind of dabble in like marketing, paying for like advertising, paying to be on like certain like influencer blog sites and stuff. So I started to get traction there. And then I would say like 3 years in, all my funnels dried up. So in year three, I didn't hit my revenue goal, which I was pretty pissed off about that. Um, and so I needed to make a change at that point. And I have a good friend who's like a marketing guru in our profession. And she's like, you have to create your own marketing funnel in your own channels. You cannot be dependent on someone else's, because you don't have any control on someone else's marketing funnel. So that's when I started my blog. I launched my podcast, Money Checkup. And so that, it took maybe like 6 months to a year to start to see value from that. But that was probably one of the best decisions I made for Fit. And I wish I did that earlier, right? Just to have built that funnel a little sooner than I did. But it was good because it was a learning experience for me to see like what media platform worked best for me and my personality type.
So, something you had mentioned earlier, which is a client came to you and they wanted help with investing in real estate and having a financial plan to invest in real estate. And you didn't have the expertise at the time. You said you went out and you developed that expertise. So I'm really curious how your process is to go out and kind of build that service expertise or that branch inside of your firm, and what it looked like.
Yeah. So, because I'm like a tax professional at heart, like a lot of the work we do in tax is research based. So it's really research. Like I've initially started with like Google searches, like investment, real estate, how to get started. I tried to read everything I could. Then I started to see like who were like the main kind of professionals in the niche I was serving, right? So in the physician community, there's like a handful of people who like have a big following because they've built the real estate portfolio. So I wanted to talk to them, right? And not to just like say tell me everything, right? But to just get a better understanding, like here's what I'm seeing. This is what I'm advising clients. Like, what is it that you're doing that might be different? Because a lot of them have courses. I'm referring my clients to the courses. So I want to make sure that the information matches. And then since I like a lot of the real estate has to do with tax, since I have that foundation, it made that piece of it easier. So the tax piece I picked up right away because it's easy for me to understand that. And then it's just building blocks, right? My learning style is very much doing. I learn a lot better by doing than by necessarily like kind of reading. So for me, it's like get the information, get the data, do my research, and then implement. So for me, it was like I'm going to try this, right? And for my earlier clients, I'm like, here's what I'm learning, and let's try this and let's see what happens, right? And it's kind of trial and error. And so I did that with a lot of my initial clients who are interested. And then after I did it a few times, then I was able to build out kind of my process, my templates, like how I think about it, how it fits into cash flow, and then kind of making that a piece of the financial plan. So it was trial and error, and then just trying to talk to like all the people who are experts in this field, so that I feel like I'm talking to the right people who can help fill in the gaps if I have gaps in my education.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And to go back to something, we kind of started the interview with is that you got comfortable going super niche with your audience. So describe what that means to you, and what was the impact to your firm from going super niche. I don't know what your niche was before, but walk us through those steps.
Yeah. So it kind of happened. I was kind of like I was forced to super niche, because what happened was when I started, I specialized in physicians, and there was a handful of us. And then, all of a sudden there was a lot more advisors specializing in physicians. So there was no way to differentiate me from the other advisors. So I said, okay, well, what is it about what I do in my background that can differentiate me from the rest of the advisors who specialize in physicians, right? So I was like, well, I can focus on 1099s because of my tax background. I can work with practice owners. So then I started doing, focusing my marketing efforts on just that specific group. And then I got to a point where kind of the sites that I was advertising on and stuff, I didn't need that as much anymore because people were finding me in other ways, right? Like I wrote a blog post on the mechanics of investing in real estate and the tax implications. And then one of my clients was like, oh, your blog post is making the rounds in this like physician real estate group. And I was like, okay, cool, right? Like, so it's interesting that when if you kind of cater everything to like what you do, people will find you. And then the conversations are a lot easier because I don't have to sell anyone, right? They've already gotten to know me, they know what I do, so they know they want to work with me. It's just whether it makes sense for them, and with the price point and my timeline for working with them. So that's how it's kind of evolved. So I would say like an ideal client coming in right now, which is like I have a client who's starting, is like husband and wife, both physicians. Husband is owner in a practice, wants some help with seeing if they're maximizing everything they can on that side. They're also interested in building a real estate portfolio. They have two small kids. They're figuring out college funding, all of that stuff, right? So that hits all the buckets in terms of what I do with my prospects. So part of super niching is being comfortable saying no, because for every one person who I say yes, there's 15 people I have to say no to because they're not in my niche. So I'm intentional in that I won't take anyone outside of my niche anymore. Because I I'm at a point where I don't want to necessarily have to relearn how to service a whole new set of clients who are not in my niche. And number two is I'd rather spend that time continue to get better in kind of the background and the services that I'm providing and doing it in a better way, right? So it's more value for the clients, and then we can provide more of the service that we want to provide.
Yeah, and so it ended up being 1099 physicians or practice owners. Is that nationwide or just in Southern California or in the state of California?
It's nationwide. So
Okay, okay.
my practice has been virtual from the beginning, mainly because we were in Chicago in the time and knew we'd move to LA. So I intentionally structured it to be national. So we have clients in 17 states now.
Yeah, well, it's like what you said. If you think about that specialization or that layer, and you start writing articles about the implications of real estate investing for 1099 physicians, how many people are writing those articles?
Right.
And so it's not like every day there's a new article about these things. And so if you write one that's really knowledgeable, really specific, I think it could do wonders for your firm. We've had guests that come on and said, well, I focus on helping TikTok influencers get a control of their finances. It's like, well, how many accountants are targeting TikTok influencers, right? And she's,
That's
so
great.
anyways, I think there's so many benefits to super niching or micro niching down. But this interview has been a lot of fun. I know you put out a lot of content. You have a podcast, you have a website. If somebody's listening right now and they want to reach out, say thank you for coming on, learn more about what you do, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, fitadvisors.com. That's where they can reach out to me directly. My podcast is on the website as well as my blog post. So you can also sign up for my newsletter.
Awesome. And if you were out and about and you couldn't jot down all the notes, all the tidbits, all the tactics from today's interview, you can go to jetpackworkflow.com/blog, jetpackworkflow.com/blog. We'll do a full summary of today's interview. If you really love the interview, share it with a fellow firm owner and leave a review. Help us get the word out about the podcast. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.